Your heart is free. Have the courage to follow her.
All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us.
What we do in life echoes in eternity.
No retreat. No surrender.
All right, so the main topic of today is we're going to be talking about if the Bible is true. We're kind of be just on like a base level, and we can go into more detail later down the line if that's wanted or if we feel like it's needed or anything. We just want to try to keep it real basic. We don't want to turn anyone off, like, worrying about too
Right.
stuff that's too in depth or, whatever the case is. So we're just going to try to present the
Right.
basic facts.
Not only is the Bible real, but the most Christianity as a whole hinges on Jesus dying and then being resurrected from the dead. So we're
Right.
going to prove a little bit of that as well,
Yep.
hopefully.
Did Jesus really die is the first point of discussion, right?
Right.
So the first point that is, I guess, to be talked about is in his crucifixion. It was a multi-step process. It's not just they kill you within a second. It's like a whole punishment because at the time these were really bad people that were getting crucified and Jesus. So it was for like the worst.
It was a death for criminals, basically.
Yeah, and everyone has pretty much agreed upon that Jesus was a real person. That fact is known. Um, but anyway, like I said, or like we said, it all hinges on him dying and resurrecting. It's pretty easy for anyone to die, but he had to also resurrect. So we're gonna first prove that he died, because I guess some people don't think that he did, or that's kind of debated upon. Um, but just from a physical standpoint, there's a lot of good evidence. Everyone knows, especially that works out, that the back is a big muscle group. So the flogging was usually on the back area, so that also could be your legs and the main muscles that you use to stand up. And so those would obviously get torn up, and that's going to cause a vast amount of blood loss. The big muscles that receive a lot of blood, and they constantly are pumping blood. And especially if anyone who works out knows, when you get a pump or you get blood flowing through those muscles, it's going there to try to help the muscle work harder to lift the weight, and in which case he's carrying the cross that was part of the punishment up a mountain. So that's going to take walking, supporting the weight on your back.
Which was after the flogging. They
This
made
is
him
after.
carry the cross across the town to his
Right.
final destination where they put him on the cross.
Right. And yeah, just that the muscles being open wounds and constantly bleeding out. Even if he was sedentary after that point, definitely probably would have bled out. But on top of that, getting the pump and getting all the blood then coming out definitely would lend to bleeding out at some point. Basically, that would have definitely meant that he was gonna die at some point, but that's not actually what is believed to have killed him. But that definitely would have been one thing that would have killed him in the near future for sure. Jesus resurrected from the dead with the question mark, because if not, Christianity is fake. So now this is talking about the resurrection specifically. And the first point is the 500 eyewitnesses that gave separate accounts, and not even all of them were not even Christians. But at the time, shortly following, they all gave accounts that they saw Jesus alive.
The argument is that mass hallucination is what was the result of the 500 eyewitnesses, but there's no evidence of mass hallucination at all. You're lucky to even get 3 people hallucinating the same thing. In Jewish culture, well, I'm pretty sure even back then, not even in Jewish culture, back then, women weren't held so highly.
This is good stuff.
And so basically, if they saw a crime, they might as well have just kept their mouth shut, and nobody's gonna believe them.
Fun fact: if you don't believe this, just look at the modern Middle East.
So if they reported anything, nobody's gonna take them seriously. And so basically, in the Bible, there were women that discovered the empty tomb,
Hmm.
And so they're the ones that went and told the apostles, the disciples. So if this was just like a Looney Tunes story, people just made it up, they wouldn't have put women as the founders of the empty tomb.
Skepticism is a great thing, and we're going to try to convince skeptics by starting with the biggest skeptic at the time. That was Paul. In case you didn't know, Paul Tarsus. Everyone knows that he was a real person. You can look it up.
So Saul, has an encounter with Jesus. And so before the encounter, he was a Pharisee.
Yeah, so he thought he was a good dude,
Right.
slaughtering Christians
Even
because he thought they were heathens.
Right.
And he thought they were doing blasphemy against the God of Moses because they didn't believe that Jesus was a savior.
Right.
So in his mind, he was a good dude, but he was actually being a bad dude. I think it's Acts 9, 1 through 10, where he gets to, yeah. So now Saul, still breathing threats at murder against the disciples of the Lord, he went to the high priest, so this is a Pharisee, and asked for letters from him to the synagogues at Damascus, so that if he found any belongings to the way, both men and women, he might bring them bound to Jerusalem. As he was traveling, it happened that he was approaching Damascus, and suddenly a light from heaven flashed around him, and then he falls to the ground and heard a voice saying to him, and this God talking, "Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me?"
So that Saul had his encounter. Now, I guess the whole theme, though, is that he went from prosecutor to apostle.
Mm-hmm.
After the crucifixion, the Christian followers were being prosecuted, not only by the Jewish authorities, but a little bit later down the line, the Roman authorities. And so they went into hiding. They were scared for their lives. But then all of a sudden, bam, they started going out four corners out of nowhere, preaching the gospel, willing to risk their lives, and many of them did lose their lives for the cause.
Oh, and it's significant too, all the prophecies of saying all basically the things that were going to happen to God, about his birth, Isaiah, Ezekiel, all the prophets, the Old Testament prophets, and his whole life. And the thing is, too, the Old Testament is dated way, way before the fact or Jesus being alive and everything, and those prophecies were in there. Anyway, all the prophecies coming true. Jesus also prophesied about it was going to take him 3 days to rise, and he prophesied that Peter was going to deny him 3 times, and he prophesied Judas would betray him. And this was all before the fact, and this was all recorded. Pretty convincing base level of why that Jesus was real and the Bible is true and it didn't get lost in translation, right?
Right.
No,
Until next time, shalom.
Gracias.